This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Chapter 7, The Way Out of the Mountains, and our symbol is the Flame of Tarvalin. The way down out of the mountains was hard, but the lower they went, the less Perrin needed his fur-lined cloak. Hour by hour, they rode out of the tailings of winter and into the first days of spring. The last remnants of snow vanished, and grasses and wildflowers, white maiden's hope and pink jump-up, began to cover the high meadows they crossed. Trees appeared more often, with more leaves, and grasslarks and robins sang in the branches. And there were wolves, never in sight. Not even Land mentioned seeing one. But Perrin knew. He kept his mind firmly closed to them, yet now and again a feather-light tickle at the back of his mind reminded him they were there.
I don't have a lot to say other than... what's the point of this chapter?
Moving them
from one place to another. It's one of the few points where I've said this chapter really should just have been merged into the next one. Like I rarely say that, but I really do think that this seems to be fairly artificial chapter break. But I was just curious, like, what do you think the Flame of Tarvalin's doing at the top of the chapter? Is it just because they're with Moraine? Because it's spring?
Moraine channels to catch the fish.
Okay.
That's actually a favorite scene of mine that I think about sometimes, although I forgot it. Moraine crawling into the grass on her stomach and then just channeling up some fish.
I love it, yeah. No, it's one of my favorite, like, visions of Moraine in her fancy dress, buttoning up her sleeve to get a few fish for dinner.
Before we get there, I guess I'll read a little more. I liked this one part. It reminded me of backpacking a little. In the beginning, at least, it was a boring journey. One cloud-capped mountain was much like another, one pass little different from the next. Supper was usually rabbit, dropped by stones from Perrin's sling. He did not have so many arrows as to risk shooting at rabbits in that rocky country. Breakfast was cold rabbit, more often than not, and the midday meal the same, eaten in the saddle. So just substitute rabbit for ramen, and that's like pretty much
just constant
noodles.
I don't know, I think I'd prefer a rabbit.
Yeah, to noodles. If I could have the noodles and the rabbit together, that would be ideal.
I wonder do you think they get tired without eating a lot of carbs? Because just pure protein is going to be tough to have a lot of energy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as good. You can do fine on a super high protein and fat diet. Rabbit starvation is a thing.
Where you just eat rabbit and you can die from it?
I think it's because rabbit meat is too lean to actually sustain you forever. Sure. It's like almost pure protein.
But it just doesn't have enough fat to it. Yeah, protein poisoning.
Yeah, I suppose if you cooked it up in enough oil, it would be fine.
But where are you getting the oil?
Yeah, that's an intensive process. Oil's hard to get.
I also like there's a little bit of relationship going on here between Moraine and Lan. There's like a page of them sort of going back and forth a little bit right before that.
Yeah.
Sort of talking about Muriel and sending him off.
Moraine wants Lan to get them going faster, and he says basically it's impossible. We can't ride the horses in the dark. We'll be moving much slower if one of them breaks a leg, he says essentially. And she threatens to send him to Myrell if he's ready to retire.
It's only going to happen when she's dead. And so he's basically saying, no, I'm going to take care of you.
And this one line says, she half sounded as if the threat were irritated truth, half as if she were making a joke. I take that really literally.
Yeah.
Like she's just playing with him.
It harkens back to a lot of the relationship in New Spring, where they're actually kind of playing tricks on each other. And
just like, you're killing me, Lan.
Yeah.
You know what happens when you kill me.
And he comes back with, you'll outlive me long, just being like, no, I'm going to keep you alive no matter what.
Yeah.
Don't even think about dying. It's a very Kyrian and very dry. They're very straight-faced when they tell their jokes. And you're like, wait, are you joking or not?
I always really like Talmanas and, is it Matt interacting?
Yeah.
They're together for a long time, right?
Totally. Maybe Moraine just has a little bit of that straight-faced humor going on.
Oh, well, she would, wouldn't she?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they share a culture.
And Moraine hasn't been away for that long. She's only like in her 40s, right?
Yeah. It's 20 years in Aes Sedai.
I'll read this part. Once, 3 days after setting out, Moraine joined them. And Perrin was already talking about catching fish with his hands, him and Loyal. Stretching herself out on the stream side and undoing rows of pearled buttons to roll up her sleeves as she asked how the thing was done, Perrin exchanged surprised looks with Loyal. It is not that hard, really, Perrin told her. Just bring your hand up from behind the fish and underneath, as if you're trying to tickle its belly. Skipping a bit. I tried for days before I ever caught anything, Loyal added. As difficult as that, Moraine murmured. Her hand slipped into the water, and a moment later came out with a splash, holding a fat trout that thrashed the surface. She laughed with delight as she tossed it up onto the bank. That's kind of an un-Moraine-like moment.
It's very un-Moraine-like, but at the same time, sometimes she has a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't come out that often, but she doesn't always... She's not doom and gloom all the time.
Yeah, she seems really lighthearted in that scene, like Nerd Up is saying, and it is a little odd.
In some ways, I think she's kind of happy that Rand's off doing his thing. This is like Moraine back on the road looking for the Dragon Reborn. This is her wheelhouse. This is what she does.
It is what she's been doing for like the last 20 years.
This, for her, probably feels very familiar and, in a lot of ways, fun. Even though I'm sure she's worried about Rand, she's also like, well, I'm tracking the Dragon Reborn.
Do you think she's just like making a net out of air or water and pulling in any fish that's nearby?
Well, we've talked a lot about how she can control sort of the animals with the ants in New Spring, the blues.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the same, the controlling animals weave, where she just sort of casts out a net and gets the fish to basically sit there and come, And so we see here Rand and Loyal move up the bank, and Moraine just stays in the same spot because all she's doing is casting out a weave to get casting out a net in quotes, to get the fish to just swim up right up to her and stay in place, and then she just grabs them.
And if I remember right, we were talking about this recently, but if I remember right, that's a secret weave that only the blues know.
Yeah, you were saying that. Is that a New Spring thing?
Yes, I think so. I know the Lan gets ants in his pants part. Discord seems to be agreeing with me.
Yeah, but I don't think she's actually like reaching out with like water and air and physically grabbing the fish and scooping them up. I think she's grabbing them with her hands, but I think she's getting them to stay in place somehow, and getting them to swim to her somehow.
Well, she gets 3, and I think Perrin and Loyal only get 1 apiece.
And they're smaller.
Yeah, 3 big fat trout. Maybe she's just delighted to be eating trout. I would be.
It's also possible that maybe she's trying to... We see a little bit of this with the chores, but she's trying to sort of bring Perrin to her side a little bit. And they've traveled together a fair amount already, but...
That's possible. I thought you were going to say lighten their spirits.
Possibly, but somehow that doesn't seem a very Moraine thing to do.
No, it doesn't.
She's all about... She'll have fun if she wants to, but she doesn't really worry about, like, if other people are feeling okay. If there's one thing I would say Moraine does not worry about so much, it's how other people are feeling.
Next couple paragraphs is basically Perrin complaining to Loyal how Moraine doesn't take her turn doing any of the chores because she just leaves the fish there and she's like, there you go, later. Mm-hmm. But it's, if you catch them, you're supposed to skin and gut them.
And this does seem to be her first step towards getting the boys to do, or getting Perrin to do exactly what she says.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to clean the fish because she caught them. And they're going to do this little thing because she is the Aes Sedai. And very quickly, he and Loyal were doing cooking and the cleaning up and any other little chore that Moraine thought of. He even discovered that somehow or the other, he had taken over tending Aldib every night, unsaddling the mare and rubbing her down, while Moraine settled herself, apparently deep in thought. Apparently? Wait, Moraine's just sitting on the log, drinking her tea, while Perrin and Loyal are doing all the cooking and the work. Somehow.
He sums it up a bit later, saying to Loyal, and this is where Lan breaks in, I expect she means to have us back in the habit of doing what she says by the time we reach the next village. A good habit to be in, Lan said, throwing back his cloak. In the fading light, he had appeared out of nowhere. Perrin nearly fell over from surprise, and Loyal's ears went stiff with shock. Neither of them had heard the warder's step. A habit you should never have lost, Lan added.
Again, how badass is it that even Perrin doesn't hear Lan walk or see him with his enhanced eyes
and ears,
and Loyal with his bigger eyes that can see better in the dark. I guess he's probably wearing the warder cloak, right?
Yeah. It says he throws off his cloak.
So they get out of the mountains and descend into Giladon.
Is it Giladon? We had this conversation recently, but I forgot. Really, there's no pronunciation here. Come on, book. I'm going to Google it. It was something I've never been sure about.
Giladon. Yeah, I think I'm right.
Giladon?
It's definitely 3 syllables in the audiobooks.
Well, there's nothing between the L and the D. Gale. Oh, F it.
So yeah, they head into the village of Jarra. Probably what? You think a week after they left camp?
Yeah, Perrin says 3 days out she catches the fish. It doesn't say exactly how long it takes them, but I think a week.
And then there's another day, a day after sighting the first field. The sun touched the horizon. They came to the village of Jarra. Probably less than a week.
Soon, fields encircled by rough stone walls and farmers plowing round the sides of hills were common sights, if not exactly frequent, along with lines of people moving across the plowed ground, sowing seeds from sacks slung from their shoulders. Scattered farmhouses and barns of gray stone sat on hilltops and ridges. The wolves should not have been there. Wolves avoided places where men were, but Perrin could still sense them, an unseen screen and escort ringing the mounted party. Impatience filled him. Impatience to reach a village or a town, any place where there were enough men to make the wolves go away. A day after sighting the first field, just as the sun touched the horizon behind them, they came to the village of Jarra, not far north of the border with Amadisha. Not far north of the border with Amadisha.
And that's the end of chapter 7. That was like one of the shorter ones.
Yeah. It's interesting to see what other people get out of the same words, especially when you never get to confer with anyone about how to pronounce a thing. Is it Amadicia in the audiobooks or Amadicia? I think it's Cia.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I always made the single C a ch. Oh, I thought everyone was leaving for like a split second. It's like, geez, wow, okay.
Everyone's like, see ya, you guys did one chapter and it was kind of boring. We're done. And you can't pronounce words right, so see ya. I'm a Decia.
Yeah. Should we just break right into chapter 8?
Yeah.
Do you want to, I don't know if you want to stop the recording.
No, not at all, because that was like 35 minutes, including 20 minutes of bullshit. So.
Okay, yeah.
It's
not a ton. It's a walking chapter. Or riding, I guess.
Let's just jump right into chapter 8. They walk into Jarra. Because again, I don't even think this should be a chapter break here.
Yeah.
This should just be like them walking into Jarra and then continuation.
Just riding until chapter 8. Jarra. And our symbol is the wolf. For obvious reasons.
Yeah, I don't think we even have to. Jarra is the town. The wolf is gnome?
Listen and find out.
Yeah. Laugho.
Gray stone houses with slate roofs lay clustered along the few narrow streets of Jarra, clinging to a hillside above a little stream spanned by a low wooden bridge. The muddy streets were empty, and so was the sloping village green, except for one man sweeping the steps of the village's only inn, standing beside its stone stable. But it looked as if there had been a good many people on the green not long before. Half a dozen arches, woven of green branches and dotted with such few flowers as could be found this early in the year, stood in a circle in the middle of the grass. The ground had a trampled look, and there were other signs of a gathering. A woman's red scarf lying tangled at the foot of one of the arches, a child's knitted cap, a pewter pitcher tumbled on its side, a few half-eaten scraps of food.
I have to ask a question. Master Harrod, is he a rotund man or a skinny man?
The owner of the inn?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I wasn't able to figure it out.
I don't know if it mentions it, because there's only a really short interaction with him. But he's a nice guy, presumably. The aromas of sweet wine and spiced cakes clung about the green, mixed in with smoke from dozens of chimneys and evening meals cooking. For an instant, Perrin's nose caught another odor, one he could not identify, a faint trail that raised the hair on the back of his neck with its vileness. Then it was gone, but he was sure something had passed that way. Something wrong.
What do you think it is?
I mean, I immediately wanted to say Fane, but he couldn't have moved that fast. So could it have been Shaidar Haran?
No.
What do you think?
Darkhounds.
Oh, the Dark Hounds.
Because later, at the end, 2 chapters in, we see Rand encountering the Dark Hounds being chased by them in the night.
Shadow Brothers?
The only 2 things that smell wrong like that are gray men and dark hounds. And since we see dark hounds shortly, I'm assuming it's dark hounds.
Yeah. And Rand is only like a day travel beyond them.
Aradia's calling us out and saying that it's gray men. It's not dark hounds because they would smell like sulfur.
The gray men that we kind of deduced were being talked about a couple of chapters ago with the white cloaks running around and people dying in the night by a knife without anyone noticing. They'd be nearby. So there's dark hounds and gray men following Rand? And we know there's gray men wandering around just killing anyone that looks like Rand around the area. Dark hounds are usually associated with the smell of sulfur.
Sure. I thought I was being clever.
And it could easily be the gray men too. Well, you were. I mean, I didn't get it. I wasn't I didn't figure anything out.
So here's some follow-up to that. In Chapter 42, at Easing the Badger, Perrin smells the same stench as at Jarra just before he's attacked by 6 gray men. So confirmation that smell is the same smell as gray men.
Nice.
So yes, so this is Rand being tracked by gray men then.
He totally freaks out when he sees Loyal. Well, not totally. I mean, less than a lot of other people have.
Well, he bugs out, but he thinks that Ogier and Trollocs are children's tales, so he has no idea what to make of Loyal.
Yeah. I also liked at the end of that paragraph, Perrin can smell that the guy was partying yesterday. Or recently.
He's got that smell of sour wine on him.
Yeah.
Well, the weddings were going on. Yeah, I'd be partying too if there was weddings going on.
Everybody was.
Totally.
Everybody's like hungover in this next couple pages that they run into.
Yeah, I like how they're like, oh, they're tired. No, they're hungover. Guys, can we call a hangover?
And this is Simeon, who's a worker in the inn. Master Harrod is the innkeeper. He says, if you wish for anything, ask for Simeon.
And Simeon is the brother of Gnome, but Simeon is not a good person.
Yeah, Simeon? Why do you think that?
Because now this may be something that got changed in book 13, Towers of Midnight, but when Perrin meets Boundless again and he hears his story and gets visions of what was going on, he basically recognizes Gnome's brother Simeon as having beaten him. And it looks like he may have also killed their younger sister. And that's the reason that Gnome has retreated from the world of men, because of the constant beatings and the anger. I just looked this one up.
Yeah?
Boundless, Perrin said, "What do you think of the world of men?" Perrin was immediately hit with a rapid succession of images. Pain, sadness, dying crops. Pain, a large, stout man, half drunk, beating a pretty woman. Pain, a fire, fear, sorrow. Pain. Perrin stumbled back. Boundless kept sending the images one after another. A grave, a smaller grave beside it, as if for a child. A fire getting larger. A man, Gnome's brother. Perrin recognized him, though the man had not seemed dangerous at the time. Enraged.
Huh.
It's possible that there's maybe the father is the one being abusive, and then the brother is perhaps angry about something else. Because I guess the big man is probably not his brother, because his brother is not really described as a big man. Clearly looks like a dysfunctional family, most likely an abusive father, perhaps also somewhat of an abusive brother. He just was confused when his brother turned into a wolf brother.
Yeah.
Too many brothers in that sentence.
And he does want his brother healed. He even asks about Moraine, which he admits was risky. But that's, wow, great catch.
Well, I wanted to look it up because we only encounter Gnome twice, once as a wolf and once as Boundless. So I went ahead and read that chapter to try and see what we could see. It's interesting because here at the end, Perrin tells Simon that he's a good man. And then I'm looking at this, Simeon, that he's a good man. And then I'm looking up, at the end of this book, and I'm like, whoa, wait. He was enraged, and even though Perrin thought he was a good man, he sees him beating his brother. That seems really odd. And because Gnome is such a critical turning point for Perrin, both in the beginning and at the end, right? I really do think that, well, we can get to it, but meeting Gnome kept him from acquiring his powers earlier.
He's already worried, but this worries him more.
Do we want to dig a little bit more into the
beginning of the chapter, all before that?
let's talk about the conversation and the weddings and the White Cloaks before we dig into Gnome and Wolf Brother stuff.
I think where I left off is, if you wish for anything, ask for Simeon. When they're introducing themselves, Simeon asks for news and says, you must have traveled far. Lan says they hadn't traveled far at all, which is a lie.
Well, they really haven't. They're only a couple of days out from their camp, where they've been staying for the last 3 months.
Well, what does far mean?
Yeah, I think he's asking for
traveling
news.
from Toman Head is pretty far.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's true. But I think he's asking for more recent news. Word of the Great Hunt, the false dragon in Tarabon, or maybe Aradaman, which would be Rand.
Yeah. Well, okay, maybe it's not a direct lie, but Lan says, we have not come that far, Lan said, swinging down from his saddle. No doubt you know more than I.
Also like how Lan is, helping to lie for Moraine a little bit there.
That's what I saw it as.
Yeah. He's able to say things that she can't, and then she can just sort of give misleading statements.
And Moraine doesn't answer at all. She just says, you have had a wedding here? A wedding, good mistress? Why, we've had a lifetime of weddings. A plague of them. All in the last 2 days. Apparently, the weaver's daughter asked the blacksmith to marry her, even though he was twice her age. The old fool just took off his apron and said yes.
Severe twisting of chance to make all these people who want to get married just, go for it and do something they wouldn't normally do in 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And, of course, Moraine is like, oh, it's severe twisting. Rand was here. Okay, no problem. And meanwhile, Perrin's still trying to, figure it out and ask people and be like, have you seen, and she's like, shut up.
That's very interesting, Perrin said when Simeon paused to yawn again. But have you seen a young... It is very interesting, Moraine said, cutting him off. And I would hear more of it later, perhaps. For now, we would like rooms and a meal. Lan made a small gesture toward Perrin down low, as if telling him to hold his tongue. And Simeon asks what loyal is.
Here's a hint. Never ask anybody at a bar what they are. It's racist. It's really racist. Don't do it. At worst, they should answer you American and give you the finger. At best, they will hit you.
This is one of the most annoyed... Well, Loyal is pretty annoyed in this scene. There's other scenes where he gets annoyed, but it's pretty unusual.
If someone was like, are you a human? Humans aren't real. You'd be like, yes, we are. We live one country over. Seriously? Ogier are right there. And because he lives so long, his generation, the generation before him, remembers a time when people were more familiar. And so they're like, can't believe that they're forgetting about us already.
Loyal's grandpa could have been alive during Archer Hawkwing's reign.
Right.
Or I guess, just 3 generations back.
But it's just, how do you respond to someone saying, you're not real? Yeah, I am. I'm right here.
I'm an Ogier. What did you think I was, a Trolloc? Trolloc, good master. Why, I'm a grown man. I don't believe in children's tales.
Did you say Ogier? Why, Ogier or a children's tale? Wait a minute.
He kept rumbling to himself about not understanding why so few humans remembered the Ogier.
Yeah, I love the description of the weary men at the tables, because they're just all really hungover. And I love that Jordan is able to express that so clearly without saying the word hungover.
I also like that Simeon calls for 2 boys to go fetch and to put the horses in stalls, and 2 boys with hay in their hair tumbled out of the stable. Literal hay hairs. I guess that's the only reason I liked that.
No. Okay. I was like, all right.
Like those people from Emmons Field, all with hay in their hair. Backcountry people, is that what they call it? Or downcountry people?
Downcountry people, yeah. I like when Master Herod begins explaining Ogier to everybody else, making up all of this. He's like, I know, I've met them 5 minutes before you did, so I know everything there is to know about Ogier. And Loyal's just twitching.
Yeah.
These 2 chapters have a lot of memorable scenes in them. I can visualize these scenes really well.
Yeah, it feels real.
Yeah.
I also liked another Perrin extra senses bit where when he walks into the inn, he has the thought, or the narration says, the inn smelled of ale and wine, cheese and weariness. Just like that it's peppered in there.
That's a good point. I missed that.
All good smells and tired people. Yeah, the smell of hangover.
So then we get this whole thing about the White Cloaks.
Yeah.
It's because I guess they came in yesterday, and I made a count, and they started off with 20 White Cloaks, and they got hit with Viren twistingness. And 3 of them upped and announced they weren't White Cloaks anymore. 1 announced that he was going to be a hunter for the Horn. 1 of them went to go hunt the dragon on Almoth Plain, and 2 of them went mad. And then a couple of them were harassing women and chained up by the other remaining. So it looks like about
more children showed up. Was that what happened?
So what I think happened is 10 of the children basically, there were 20 children. 10 of them went nuts in some way or were affected by the Taviran, and the other 10
they forswore their oaths. Or
went mad or tried to assault women or something. And then the other 10 stopped a few of them and rode off.
Dragged them back to Amadisha.
Totally.
Didn't any of you try to stop them? Perrin said. Good master, you carry that axe like you know how to use it. But it isn't so easy to face up to men with swords and armor, when all you know is how to use a broom or a hoe. The rest of the White Cloaks, those as hadn't gone off, put an end to it.
It's always fun to watch all the various Taviran, mucking with people's lives that Rand does in the background. And then, all of the times he doesn't talk about it. Just think about it constantly going on for all these 2 years and how it must have just torn society apart.
I like this little bit at the end of that where Moraine says, "They are gone now, and trouble's with them. I am sure we will pass a quiet night, because Rand isn't there anymore." That's what I suspect. That's why she's sure that that night, the following night, would be a quiet one when they arrive, because Rand isn't there now.
Right. She rarely ever predicts the future because of her 3 oaths, but when she's sure, she's sure. I like Perrin. All these weddings and White Cloaks are all very well, but I'd sooner know if Rand stopped here. Well, that's totally...
Moraine already knows.
Yeah, she knows.
But Perrin doesn't know what he's looking at.
Right.
And when Simeon leads Perrin to his room, Perrin actually asks Simeon and gives the Rand's description. Simeon says, "I remember him. Came yesterday morning, early. Looked hungry, so Rand's 1 day ahead, because this is shortly after dawn."
Now, would you say he's more Taviran now than he was in the previous 2 books? Would you say it's amping up?
Well, the dragon becomes more powerful as the dark becomes more powerful, right? So I feel like as the seals break and the dark gains traction, so does Rand.
I'm nodding.
In power. And this is the least of some of the Taviran stuff that we see. Really crazy stuff happens later. This is just a bunch of people getting married in a couple days isn't nearly as crazy as, I'm trying to think of a good example. Well,
there's all the individual children falling out of windows and landing unharmed
or something.
And the guys falling over and breaking their neck and things landing in a perfect circle, and there's a bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, after Veins of Gold, he's able to turn it to his advantage and open up all the sacks of grain, and they're fine, and, do a few other things.
Grass grows where he walks and shit. God, Rand.
Is the wells drying up and then coming back out? That's later in this book, right?
A well?
So as they follow, Rand, destroys and saves various villages by passing.
Uh-huh.
His Taviranness gets pretty strong and twisted. He's twisting the pattern. And when I say twisted, he's twisting the pattern hard for the rest of this book.
I don't remember the thing about a well.
Oh, it's just as he's passing through various, one time there's the mayor finds a bunch of gold bricks, and so the village isn't going to die. And in the next village, they're digging a well, and they hit water, and in the next village, the water dries up. And so they're going to have to abandon the village. It's just showing his various...
Oh, I see.
Chance.
Yeah. Simeon says he played the flute for all of the weddings. But also he was an odd fellow that talked to himself and laughed when nobody said anything. Woke us all in the middle of the night, yelling. It was just a nightmare, but he wouldn't stay any longer.
Now, I've seen a lot of people say that, a lot of insanity is stress, and I think we've even talked about that. But I do think that from an outside perspective, Rand is going mad. And we spend a lot of time in his head and a lot of time not realizing it, but I think Rand, from this book on, is a lot madder than I generally give him than you think at first glance.
I think so, too. And Whenever we talk about the creeping madness, we also usually talk about the connection to Luce Theron and how the taint slowly breaks down the barrier that's supposed to be there. And at the end of the chapter after this one, I think, is the little Rand perspective.
Yeah.
He channels Balefire.
Yeah, totally.
Which is another hint, maybe, at the kind of connection, like knowing things he shouldn't know.
I can see that.
But, it's still... But that connection is gradually opens up over the next few books.
Totally. And from inside his head, it seems like he's doing everything rationally. But if you look at it from an outside perspective, he's a little nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simeon says he said something strange when he left. What? Perrin demanded. He said somebody was after him. He said the chinless man swallowed and went on more slowly. Said they'd kill him if he didn't go. One of us has to die, and I mean it to be him. His very words.
Well, that's Baal-Zaman.
Yeah.
Ishmael he's talking about there. He said we've heard him say that before to Perrin in the camp, right?
Right. I think he's sick in the head, Simeon says.
Now, this nightmare that he woke up from, was that a Teleron Riyadh dream?
I would assume so.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think, we didn't see Rand earlier.
He woke up yelling, and on his way out, he was mumbling about Baal-Zaman.
And then Simeon reveals he knows Moraine's an Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And asks for help for his brother Gnome.
What makes you think she can help your brother? Perrin asks. Why, I traveled to Gehenna once, good master, and I saw 2 women like her. I couldn't mistake her after that.
He sees Perrin, who seems to be fine with the golden eyes.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if she's able to help Perrin, surely she's also able to help my brother.
And of course, Simeon also adds that he thinks that Aes Sedai can raise the dead.
Sure, why not? Throw that in there as one of his weird beliefs.
Perrin just tells him, well, if whatever's wrong with your brother, if he's dead, that's not going to work.
Nope. That's the one thing she can't do.
But Simeon goes on. He's like, no, he's not dead. He's sick. And Perrin says, well, I'll try speaking to her for you. And tells Loyal to keep him company while he's gone. While Perrin's gone. And Loyal, of course, is like, oh, yeah, I'll keep him company. Of course, the Ogier boomed. Simeon gave a start when Loyal's hand swallowed his shoulder. He will show me my room, and we will talk. Tell me, Simeon, what do you know of trees? Trees? Good Ogier?
Loyal is going to talk for hours, and Simeon will not get a word in edgewise because he won't interrupt him. So Discord's coming up with this theory that part of why the Ta'veren twisting is so severe is, yes, Rand is powerful, but also that Perrin is right behind him. And so these two villages are like being pulled between 2 different Ta'veren.
They're getting, the pattern pushes on them twice.
Right. So, I like that. That's a neat idea. Because, again, we always kind of forget about Perrin being Ta'veren.
It makes sense. And reading this chapter and the next one, which we'll probably just break into right after this, it made me wonder about the relative strength of the 3 Ta'veren. And, well, we know Rand is, inordinately powerful in a way that hasn't happened in so long that nobody knows anything about it.
Well, and he's also, his Ta'verenness is tied to the power of the Dark One. So that as the Dark One gets more powerful, he in turn gets more powerful as a balance.
Right. But we always hear this comparison, which is the best known comparison, that of Arthur Hawkwing and his Ta'veren nature and how he could, people who intended to lie to him accidentally spoke the truth and things like that. What that made me wonder is, where are Perrin and Mat on that scale? Because we don't ever really get to see too much about that, or as in a measurable way.
Yeah, we don't get the truth coming out a lot, but all of Mat's dice throws, I think, are Ta'veren effects.
I would think so.
Which we can argue about that later, but just assuming that his luck is part of his Ta'veren nature.
Yeah.
His luck twists battles. It changes so many things. and, basically alters his life. It gives him his powers. It gives him his memories. Like, that's hugely powerful for him. And Perrin's Tavernus is tied up in his ability to, he has Queen swearing to him. He's a backwater country guy with a backwater country village, and he comes out of there with Queen swearing to him.
He seems more to influence people.
Exactly.
Like, Rand is places, Perrin is people, and Matt is events.
Luck. Yeah. But people just seem to... Perrin's is more subtle, but in a lot of ways also extremely powerful.
People's, places, and events?
I mean, yeah. Perrin forges people together. That's what he does. He's a builder. I often wonder if their Taviran nature has a lot to do with their personality. That the reason Perrin is good at forging people together is because he is a blacksmith. The reason that Matt is lucky is because he likes to gamble. The reason that Rand is, well, he's the dragon, so he's one with the land.
Yeah.
So
Perrin walks into Moraine's room and kind of tells her what's happened. And Moraine's like, "You idiot."
Definitely dresses him down a little bit. Like,
I already knew that. And yes, we know where he's going, so of course he's headed east.
Right.
Of here.
And there are other people following him, and all you're doing is leaving a trail of crumbs for them to find us, too.
Yeah. Perrin doesn't understand why Moraine's talking about the White Cloaks and other events.
Yeah, we've sort of been talking about this conversation where she sort of dumps the knowledge of Taviran on Pattern.
The weddings and the White Cloaks are enough to know that Rand had been there, and no, madness isn't catching.
And we get the whole Hawkwing is not as strongly Taviran as Rand.
Not nearly.
Not nearly. And then there's sort of a brief moment where Moraine and Lan consider killing Simeon.
That's the next thing I have. Perrin says, "Simeon knows your Aes Sedai," and Lan and Moraine look at each other. And Moraine says, "No." "As you wish. It's your decision." Lan sounded as if he thought she had made the wrong one, but the tension left him.
It wouldn't have really helped anything. Just because someone knows she's Aes Sedai isn't really a good reason to kill them.
Perrin stared at them. "You were thinking of... Simeon couldn't tell anyone if he were dead, could he?" "He will not die by my actions," Moraine said, "but I cannot, and I will not, promise that it will always be so. We must find Rand, and I will not fail in that." Was that spoken plainly enough for you?
Yeah, I'll kill people if I have to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or I'll send Lan off to do it, because he'll do it without blinking an eye.
Yeah, Sir Septon. I liked that too. That Lan's like, "Well, what do you want me to do? Kill him? Not kill him?" He just doesn't really.
He's like, either way, yeah, that's John. I think you probably should have me kill him. I think that's a good idea.
As your advisor, I should probably murder this guy, but decision's yours, boss. Moraine goes to Simeon and says, "Bring me to your brother, and I'll see about that, what I can do."
I found it very odd that she leaves Lan behind. I wonder if she suspects what's wrong with Simeon's brother.
Lan goes just to the room to talk to Simeon.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, that is weird.
She says, like, "I don't want to attract attention," but really, would the three of them attract any more attention than the two of them? I'm trying to find a motivation for it.
I'm just staring at the wall, meditating on that. I don't know why that just happened.
So just keep an eye out for what Lan's doing during this time and see if he was off murdering somebody. No, probably not. Maybe she was just trying to save Perrin some embarrassment. Let him keep his secrets a little bit.
Maybe.
That's the only reason I can think of, that she's had some idea that what would be wrong with Gnome and was trying to help Perrin keep his secrets.
Yeah. I don't know.
Her hiding things from Lan seems to be out of character, except they are drifting apart a little bit because of the whole Marielle thing. And so, yeah, Lan would know about Elias. He knows about the Golden Eyes. I can't think of a good reason for her to leave Lan behind. That's all. If anyone has any suggestions, I would be welcome to them.
Yeah, I mean, they're only walking to the back of the inn. Simeon led them to a small shed behind the stable and hurriedly unbarred the door. "This way," Simeon pointed. "There, good mistress. There, my brother, Gnome." The far end of the shed had been barred off with slats of wood, hastily, by the look of it. A stout iron lock and a hasp held shut a crude door of wooden slats. Behind those bars, a man lay sprawled on his stomach in the straw-covered floor. He was barefoot, his shirt and breeches ripped as if he had torn at them without knowing how to take them off. There was an odor of unwashed flesh that Perrin thought even Simeon and Moraine must smell. Gnome stared at them with burnished golden eyes. He'd been talking crazy almost a year, good mistress, saying he could talk with wolves, and his eyes. Simeon darted a glance at Perrin. Well, he'd talk about it when he drunk too much. This part I thought was important, this next paragraph, because it tells us something that we don't really, I don't know that we ever see this again. Cautiously, unwillingly, Perrin reached out toward Gnome as he would have toward a wolf. And then he just sees Gnome's thoughts, running through the woods with the cold wind in his nose, quick dash from cover, teeth snapping at hamstrings, taste of blood, rich on the tongue, kill. Perrin jerked back as he would have from a fire, sealed himself off. They were not thoughts at all, really, just a chaotic jumble of desires and images, part memory, part yearning. But there was more wolf there than anything else. He put a hand to the wall to steady himself. His knees felt weak.
So my theory on this, the reason that Gnome is so crazy is because any wolf in a cage would be crazy.
Yeah.
That Gnome has basically turned himself fully over to being a wolf. And he did that deliberately to retreat from the world of man.
Yeah.
And then they locked him in a cage. And so later when he's encountered as boundless, he's basically regained some of his sanity living in the wild as a wolf. But
I'm nodding.
That's why he's so crazy here, is because he's just a wolf in a cage.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was interesting that Perrin looks into the mind of another human, whether he's gone full wolf or not.
Well, that's the thing. The Wolf brothers aren't really full human, are they?
No. I guess what that made me wonder is, could Perrin and Elias sit quietly in a room and have a conversation? Without words?
That's interesting. No, he cannot. But I often wonder if that's because Elias walls himself off from the world of dreams a little bit. Elias is definitely less of, he never goes into the wolf dream.
Aradia, you're saying Perrin can't talk to Elias like that, and I'm pretty sure we've looked that up before, and I'm sure you're right. Was that from a conversation between the two of them?
I think he tries when he first meets him, and he says, I can't reach him directly. But we do see them later, when Perrin's in the world of dreams in the flesh, he runs into Longtooth, who is Elias in the wolf dream. So they certainly are able to talk in the wolf dream when they're both there. But they can't talk without being asleep.
That does make me wonder if it's a Perrin perspective thing, and if maybe they could if Elias and Perrin didn't both. For instance, the wolves can talk to him most any time unless he flips a switch. But the wolves don't seem to ever turn the switch off to off. Yeah, in a bit here, what Aradia's saying is just leading me into this. I guess we should go over the scene, but in a bit here, Moraine talks about how the way that wolves speak with each other is related to the world of dreams somehow.
Sure.
And maybe they could if they tried really hard and reached out at the same time, but it seems like an unnatural thing.
Perrin and Elias?
Also, yeah, we just don't know.
And perhaps Gnome being fully in the wolf is always reaching out.
Right. Because he's gone full wolf, he doesn't have that off switch, is
Right.
what I'm speculating. But
Sure.
I don't know. I know nothing.
Yeah.
I thought here was kind of interesting. Moraine grabs the lock and just tugs it open. And when she walks in, Gnome kind of quiets and backs away from her.
Wolves can tell an Aes Sedai.
Until he's just sitting in a corner. Oh, they can't. I mean, they can, can't they? And she just grabs onto his head.
And we know the unlocking of the lock is just a flow of earth.
Yeah.
We see the girls, the Supergirls do that quite a bit. So, and after she gets out, she basically says, no, there's nothing I can do for him. This isn't something that happened to him. This is something he is, basically.
Yeah. There's nothing physically wrong with him that I can fix.
He's just given up anything that remembers being a man. This is actually one of those things that I would say I don't fully like Brandon Sanderson's take on it.
On what?
On Boundless.
Yeah.
And the reason he fled. I feel like it takes some of the danger out of things for Perrin.
Yeah.
Because it became a deliberate choice. And I also feel like it sort of changed. There wasn't, as far as I can tell, there's no hint of abuse in this chapter.
No.
And yet that seems to be what Sanderson said drove him to it.
Well, yeah, to withdrawal from the world of humans. I mean, that makes sense to me, you know?
It makes sense to me. It doesn't seem like that's what the plan was. I don't know what the plan was.
Oh, no. I kind of would doubt it was the plan.
Right. I'm not even sure Jordan had a plan for what he was going to do with Gnome.
Oh, I meant Gnome's plan.
Oh.
Be like, I'm just going to become a wolf now. I would doubt that was the thought, but maybe withdrawing from not wanting to be a part of human life. And since there's this obvious alternative.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. It just doesn't seem like there was any hint of like a reason to withdraw.
Damn, that would be a good question for Brandon Sanderson. Hey man, was that in the notes or was that something you wrote? That's probably a thing we can still ask, right?
As far as I know, it wasn't in the. There was very little about Perrin in the notes. That most of what my understanding is that pretty much all of Perrin was original Sanderson in those last 3 books. And I'm not sure if this is true, but I heard that the only thing about Perrin in the notes was he becomes king of the Netherin, and Sanderson was basically able to write everything else from scratch.
Gotcha.
Which is why I think a lot of the teleporting Teleron-Riyadh stuff has a Sanderson flavor to it.
Moraine turns and leaves after saying she can't do anything.
Just the idea here is that you can't keep a wolf caged.
Perrin knew he should follow her, but the man, what had once been a man, snapping at the wooden bars, held him. He took a quick step and surprised himself by removing the dangling lock from the hasp. The lock was a good one, the work of a master smith. Good master? Simeon asks. Perrin stared at the lock in his hand, at the man in the cage. Gnome had stopped biting at the slats. He stared back at Perrin warily, panting. Some of his teeth had broken off jaggedly. You can leave him in here forever, Perrin said, but I don't think he'll ever get any better. If he gets out, good master, he'll die. He will die in here, or out there, Simeon. Out there, at least, he'll be free, and as happy as he can be. He is not your brother anymore. But you're the one who has to decide. You can leave him in here for people to stare at. Leave him to stare at the bars of his cage until he pines away. You cannot cage a wolf, Simeon. Not and expect it to be happy, or live long. Yes, Simeon said slowly. Yes, I see. He hesitated, then nodded, and jerked his head toward the shed door. That was all the answer Perrin needed. He swung back the slatted door and stood aside. For a moment, Gnome stared at the opening. Abruptly, he darted out of the cage, running on all fours but with surprising agility. Out of the cage, out of the shed, and into the night. The light help us both, Perrin thought. It's like light and dark at the same time. I really liked that passage.
Well, and this is where I see Simeon seems to care for his brother, like thinks about what's best for him. And the only reason he was keeping him in the cage is because you would keep anyone in the cage. You'd find someone who was acting the way he was.
Yeah.
He would, but he's able to trust Perrin with the golden eyes as for what's best for his brother. And it's one of the reasons I'm really disappointed with the way that paragraph. I guess I could think of that paragraph more as his brother being enraged about the abuse his father was aiming at them. I'm going to use that as my headcanon.
Yeah, I liked Aradia's take earlier, that maybe it was the father, or their father, and a woman and a young girl die, right? Maybe their mother and sister.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe the brother did something to the father.
Shivering, Perrin leaned his head against the cage door. He may not have fur, but he's a wolf. He's a wolf, not a man. Light help me. We didn't keep him here always, Simeon said suddenly. He was at Mother Rune's house, and she and I got Master Herod to move him here after the White Cloaks came. They always have a list of names. Dark friends they're looking for. It was Gnome's eyes, you see. One of the names the White Cloaks had was a fellow named Perrin Ibarra, a blacksmith. They said he had yellow eyes and runs with wolves. You can see why I didn't want them to know about Gnome. And Perrin asks to Simeon, do you think this Perrin Ibarra is a dark friend? And Simeon says, I thought cleverly, a dark friend wouldn't care if my brother died in a cage. I suppose she found you soon after it happened, in time to help. I wish she'd come to Jarra a few months ago.
Well, unfortunately...
Didn't really have much to do with Moraine. But
Moraine had nothing to do with it.
Simeon thinks so, and he's clever enough, at least, to see that Perrin and his brother have this same thing, but somehow Perrin is still a man and his brother isn't.
If anything, I would say Elias had a lot to do with that, because at least he had a guide to tell him, like, this is what's going on. You're not crazy.
You can at least be a reasonably sane man if a hermit that lives with wolves.
Right.
It's not the worst thing ever, perhaps. Better than a cage.
Yeah. And that's all I have until the end.
Yeah. You're a good man, Simeon. A good man. Simeon looked so pleased that Perrin felt ashamed all over again.
So I'm conflicted about Simeon. I don't know if he's a good man or not.
Yeah, I'd like to think so for some reason. Supposed to meet my landlord for a walkthrough of the old apartment, but she totally flaked out.
Well, I think you're good.
Yeah, I might use that as an excuse to just not go. I don't really know why I need to be there.
You really don't.
No.
Unless the place is a mess.
I just
or
agreed
something.
to it because I was like, yeah, sure. Well, we were going to do it yesterday, and then she was like, oh, I have something to do. Can we move to Sunday? I was like, yeah, sure. I just have to go after work. How about like 4:30? Just so I knew I could be there. And then I just went into my empty apartment to take a leak and sat on the floor and played phone games for like 45 minutes. And I was like, well, going home. I should have brought my book with me, but I didn't even think of it.
What are you reading now?
Oh, I've been carrying around Wax and Wayne.
Okay. Which one are you on?
Book 2. But I should have brought Dragon Reborn is what I meant. Because then I could have done that
Done
before
your
I got
notes.
here.
Sure.
But I figured I was just going to walk through with her and be like, yep, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when we talked about that small fee you take out of my deposit to shampoo the floors?
Yeah.
We talked about that like when I signed the lease, and she was like, we offer this thing. Like, it's pretty cheap. She was like, the guy that just moved out did it. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. Go ahead, shampoo the carpet. But none of that happened. So, whatever.
So have you still not gotten your deposit back then?
No.
That sucks.
Yeah, they're kind of flaky. I mean, they're nice enough people. So
Right, because like, didn't you moved out of there like 3 months ago, didn't you?
like 2? I'm going to say 2.
Was it 2? How long have you been living here? I have totally lost track.
I'm going to say 2 months.
Okay.
Because, yeah, it was the end of February, I think.
I don't really know. Like, because they let you keep your stuff there all this time.
Yeah, there's no one in the place. It's just a young married couple. Like, there's no, like, management company or anything like that. It's just...
We definitely had some asshole property folks that try and keep their deposit, but the renters in Portland have some power.
A little bit. I've never heard of anyone not getting their deposit unless they did something like leave all their shit behind and, like, destroy the place.
Right.
Times when me and Seth have rented houses together before, we've always gotten, like, I don't know, I don't remember, but roughly...
Oh, I remember.
More than half.
The house we lived in together, he kept like $25 to make a point because there was like some nails in the wall or something that were there when we moved in.
Yeah,
but he didn't like us very much.
Kind of, well, I don't want to call it a shithole, but it was just an old beat up house, and my windows literally rattled when the wind blew. Like that. It was a pretty house, but it was just old Victorian type.
Yeah, no one had taken care of it for 25 years.
No.
So
it was a beautiful.
It was
house,
a beautiful
though.
house, and I would have loved to renovate it, but that's not.
No, that's not worth it. Man, sand those floors and restain them. It would be so beautiful.
And just put in all new windows, redo the floors, repaint. Yeah. That's all that, and that house would have been
those
beautiful.
Windows from that era are not really windows. They're just kind of like wind slowers.
I'm not sure with those gaps around it. I think they actually might be like wind accelerators. They like take the wind that's coming in and narrow it into a stream that blows right onto you in the winter. But you know, in Portland, it never really gets that cold, so they didn't really build the houses to keep the heat in. So a lot of these older houses, they're single pane, they're not very well insulated, and they just had a big wood cast iron fireplace in the center or something to heat the whole house.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really worry about being efficient. They probably wanted the ventilation to get the smoke out.
Yeah, probably.
The city has passed a fair amount of regulation and laws to ensure that renters, if you don't get your deposit back within 31 days and a letter, you have the right to sue the landlord for twice the amount of the deposit in small claims court. So
back in New Jersey and New York, it was always the reasonable wear and tear thing where like you didn't have to, they repaint and like shampoo the carpet and that you don't have to pay for that.
Right. It's like, yes, I lived here.
Yeah. So yes, there's a wine stain on the floor now. I know. I'm sorry. I tried. But, you know, I lived there for like almost 2 years. So, you know,
right.
That's a pretty good track record.
My dog threw up on the edge of the carpet once. I'm sorry. I cleaned it up to the best of my ability, but there's still a small stain there.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, but in America, it varies greatly from state to state and even city to city.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to really predict exactly how you're going to be treated. And then, of course, there's all the stuff that's culture, the way the landlords act in that particular area.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, people will naturally try to get away with whatever they can. I just noticed this new channel, Things to Look Out For. I'm actually really appreciating that. That's
Aradia, of course, is taking over Discord and shaping it to her will.
Fuck yeah, do it.
So the brown Aja is taking over the record keeping, which we're pretty much okay with.
Surprise.
The brown Aja has had its calling with records and information. I bought a ad on Overcast, which you knew, but it looks like it's gotten us 14 subscribers so far.
Cool.
Which is actually kind of a decent number for an ad like that. And it's going to run through the rest of the month. So we're only like a week into it, and we got another 3 weeks or so. If we can get like 60 subscribers off of that, that's a good number for us.
No, it is.
Yeah. Over the course of a month.
Especially considering non-targeted ads usually get like a 1% click rate or something.
Right.
And I would imagine most of that's accidental clicking.
Yeah. It actually breaks it down for us pretty nicely. It says it's given us 4,720 views, which I assume most people haven't even looked at it. It's just popped up on their phone. Of those, 334 have tapped. That's 7% of the views. I assume most of those are accidental. And then of the people that have actually tapped on the ad, 14 have subscribed. And that's 4% of the total people who have tapped on it. Sorry, 7% of the people who have seen it have tapped on it. And 4% of the people who have tapped on it have subscribed. So I'm curious to see how that turns out. That's one of our first. We've done a few social media promotional things, but that's our first real like ad buy that I think we've done.
Yeah, I played around with some of the social media like pay ads, and I didn't feel like they were very effective.
I had put some money into Google ads as well, as it turns out. I didn't realize it until later. I'd signed up for them, and then they kept running for a while. And I don't know if I saw any jump out of that whatsoever.
Most advertising doesn't really make a ton of sense for it. Like, it has to be pretty targeted for a podcast like this.
We have two real audiences, podcast listeners and Wheel of Time readers.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much have to be a Wheel of Time reader.
Yeah.
And a podcast listener.
Right. So, I kind of like the Overcast ad because it targets the podcast folks who aren't necessarily Wheel of Time readers. And then I think we've hit a lot of the Wheel of Time folks just on social media. We've definitely thought about like slipping some merch into the back of books in various bookstores so that when people pick up Memory of Light, they see our sticker.
Still haven't done that.
No. Sticker bombing the books.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?